Welcome to Ion Franchising, where you will learn the A to Z's of. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another fabulous episode of Ion Franchising. I am your host, Lance Graulich, and I was kind of checking out my eyelashes a little bit to make sure I'm good because we have a special beauty episode. So I'm attempting to look good for this one. And former teacher decided to pursue business ownership. We're going to hear a great story here. She is the owner of 3 Deka Lash locations, Deka Lash Studios, with a 4th one in the works, hailing all the way from Oklahoma. Meet my friend Eleen Amaya. Welcome.
Hi, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be on the podcast. I appreciate it. I'm excited.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for revealing the truth about beauty, Deka Lash, you and your history. So Eleen, let's dive in. Talk about at what point did you want to be a business owner? And take a way back. I mean, what'd you do in high school? What were your interests? People always want to hear, how do people become entrepreneurs and business owners? Is this something you're born with? Is this some lab accident gone wrong and all of a sudden bit by a spider, you're Spider Woman? No, I'm just kidding.
It was definitely a process, but I do have to say my parents play a huge role in this. I think I was raised to be an entrepreneur in a way. I didn't really know it until it happened. But my mom at a very young age had her own beauty salon, did not have supportive parents. Her parents didn't really believe that she could do that. But she had my dad. And so in her early 20s, she was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to own my own salon. I grew up in that salon helping her and just watching her being so great with, her clients and her staff and just thinking like, oh, my mom, like, look at her, like she's doing it. She's a boss. And I love that. And that's what I wanted to do eventually. I just didn't know which path I was going to take, what road was going to get me there. So, but she always would tell us, believe in yourself. And then my dad, he's been with the same company for over 45 years. It's kind of crazy. Nobody really nowadays is that loyal to anything. So he's a hard worker, very loyal.
I give him a lot of credit for sure.
Yes. Yeah. He started there when he was 14 as an apprentice and then just worked his way up in the company and is now, a big shot in his company. So it's pretty cool. And he took chances. When I was 13, we left Germany where I grew up to actually move to Malaysia. Wow. That was a big jump to move your family from Germany to a place like that. But he knew it was going to get him ahead in the company. He knew if he took that risk, if he took that chance, that, things were going to come back to us and he was going to be able to kind of climb that ladder. And he did. And so, just seeing that growing up, my mom having her own business, my dad taking chances like that, and that being modeled, always gave me that belief that I could do it too. So I would say definitely it was more like I was raised to be. I just didn't know how I was going to do it yet. So
yeah, it's amazing. There's an old expression, model success.
Yeah.
And you've seen that success with mom. Now, when your mom got into the salon business, was she a beautician? Did she get
mainly hair?
Hair, got it.
Hair, but she would, for some clients, she would do their nails, she would do brides. So she would do their makeup and hair and the whole thing, but it was mostly a hair salon. But for men and women, she moved to a small town, like this little village in Germany, and just went for it. And like I said, she didn't have that support, and so it was like an even bigger deal. I had tons of support. My husband was always supportive. My parents were supportive, my siblings, like, yeah, you can do it. You can do it. Yeah. She didn't have that. So, I give props to her for, accomplishing that and being so young. I think she was only maybe like 23, 24 years old, and they borrowed some money and went for it. So it's pretty good.
You got to give her credit. So at what stage, so you got to see that, growing up, and then you became a teacher.
Yeah, so I went to school to be a teacher, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed just having an impact on somebody's life, no
What did you
matter
teach?
what that is. German.
German, of
Yep.
course.
Yep. Which, that was kind of an easy transition. My husband, he's a dentist, so he was in dental school. I was working all throughout dental school. And then I only taught for a little while because even though they teach him dentistry in dental school, they don't teach him any business, anything about running a dental practice, anything like
Yes.
that. And so I was pregnant with my daughter and I was teaching, and my husband had just bought a practice from a retiring dentist. And he was like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I know how to do, root canals and fillings and crowns, but I don't know how to manage staff. I don't know how to file insurance. I don't know anything. And so luckily, while I was in school to be a teacher, I actually worked for a physician. So I kind of saw how things worked. And like I said, I'm really good at just modeling things. When somebody kind of shows me, I'm like, okay, and I watch them. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. So I said, all right, I'll try it. And so for 11 years, him and I worked together in the dental field, me doing all of the administrative stuff and him just doing dentistry. And it worked because
you didn't do the root canals? Just kidding.
No, that probably would have been really, really bad. And I don't like that side. I had to assist him a few times, and I have to tell you, it just was not my cup of tea. Yeah. I was better with the books and everything like that. So, but it worked. He was able to do that, and I didn't obviously micromanage him. And then he just trusted me to do the rest. And we had a really successful practice, like I said, for 11 years. But it got too big. We made a lot of mistakes along the way. That's why I'm in franchising now, because things are laid out for you. And oh my gosh, the money we could have saved if we had a model that we could have modeled after, like in franchising, is, I'm sure, astronomical. But so we made tons of mistakes. But it also, obviously taught me a lot. So anyway, but going back to, it was getting too big. We had a ton of staff. Brent was working all the time and he was just getting burned out. And so it came a time where we were like, okay, he was saying, because it was also like a 45-minute drive every day to go to work. And so we decided to have him open a practice closer to home, have it be much smaller, where he can be more picky, I guess, with who his, patients are, and he only can work, 3-4 days a week. And then just have a small staff, have an assistant, have a hygienist and him that he's able to manage. Because at that point, I kind of reached out to him and I said, I love that I was able to help you with the dental office for 11 years. That's great. But it's also kind of not my dream in life to do that. I had my own dreams and aspirations, things I wanted to do. And so,
and wait, I have to stop you. This is great stuff. So is that the first time you really told him that, or did you remind him, I have had these dreams. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I don't want to do this for the rest of my life?
Yeah. I mean, we had conversations, but it was also like, we had a really successful practice. So do we really leave that, But then our kids also were starting to get to that age where they were in sports and we couldn't make it to their games at night because, we lived so far from home and they were in daycare so much. And, we really weren't spending the time with them, and they grow up so fast. So it was like we had to make a change. And like I said, we had those conversations, but it was always like, but, we're successful. So let's just keep going. And so eventually, though, you kind of want to go back to basics. When you're out of school and you have all the student loan debt, you think about I just need to make a lot of money. I want to make a lot of money and pay it off. And I want to be successful. And that's what you do. You hang on to that and you work like crazy, or most people work like crazy and want to do that. But, eventually the older you get, you realize, okay, maybe that's not all there is.
Yeah, exactly. So at what point did you realize, I mean, you mentioned the model, you're wanted to follow a model. At what point did you realize anything about franchising where it could be for you? How did that whole scenario lay out?
Yeah, so it was actually around Christmas time. We had talked about my husband downsizing, and I was telling him, you really won't need me because you can really do this on your own. There's companies now out there that you can hire that'll file the insurance for you and all that stuff. So, then it was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And we were, kind of just talking, and I was getting my lashes done, and he was asking me about it, how much is that? And I told him, how much I'm spending. And he's like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. And I was like,
but look how beautiful I look.
But it's great. And I love it. Yeah. And he didn't mind, but it was like, really? He just couldn't believe that people were spending that kind of money on lashes. And he was like, so where do you go? And he was kind of asking me about it. And I was like, well, there's this one place, and it's okay, but I don't like this and that. And he was like, well, why didn't you go somewhere else? And I'm like, well, there isn't really a place here that, only focuses on lashes and brows, and that's where they're just experts. It's usually just like a spa situation where
it's like an afterthought.
Lashes. Yeah, it's an afterthought, or a hair salon and somebody in the back does lashes, or it's at someone's house. And to be honest, I didn't really feel comfortable just going to someone's house, and you don't know what you're going to get there. So we just started Googling, lash extension studios, and a few different ones came up, and I did my research. I flew out to a couple of them, and then Deka is kind of what I stuck with, and for many reasons, but I really like that. And so that's kind of how it all came about, how I was like, okay, the whole thing with my mom having a salon and going back to that beauty, that's how I grew up. It just all kind of clicked. And I was like, I think I could do it better. Whatever is out here now in Oklahoma is okay, but I think I could do a better job. I think I could really bring in a brand and make it something, great for the state and for the, clients here and things like that.
So I have to hear, what was that conversation really like with your husband? Did he know you were exploring franchise opportunities? Or is that a surprise?
Yeah, it was a surprise. I mean, I wanted to do something. I knew, maybe I was, debating of just being a substitute, since I had my teaching degree, like at my kids' school and things like that. But I don't know, like I said, there's just always been this little voice inside of me that's like, have your own thing, be your own boss, do something. And, I knew what it was like to, have my own business, that we kind of had to, like I was saying with the dental office, we had to learn along the way. We had to make so many mistakes. And, in beauty, I feel like there would have been a million more mistakes to make. What products are you going to sell? How have they been tested? All those things. And it just seemed daunting. And so a franchise, honestly, it was just the best way to go. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
I love it. Well, and that's the best testimonial right there. I would do it again in a heartbeat. So Eleen, take everyone listening back to when you decided on Deka, and what was that process like? Like, what sealed the deal for you? Because, with franchising, for those listening that aren't familiar, at some point a franchise disclosure document is presented that has 23 items. It looks like something like the size of a mortgage that you're reading through. Some of it is not that exciting, but it's like a coffee date first, so to speak. And, you meet the corporate team via Zoom in person, but go describe the entire process and what really got you hooked.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I looked at some different ones, didn't love it. Flew out to Pittsburgh to meet the founders, Mike and Jennifer, who you've met, they're great.
Yep.
And then their whole team. And I have to say, there's many, many reasons why I love them. But just, you get a family vibe with them. Obviously, it's husband and wife team. They just, they're just great people. You can just tell nothing is like contrived. It's just very natural, and they're just
Right.
super sweet. And I felt like everybody, even in the corporate team, was very transparent. When I asked a question, they tried to figure out, an answer for me. They tried to get me an answer. It wasn't like, oh, I don't know, you'll have to talk to legal or something like that. They're very open, and I appreciated that. And then if they didn't have the answer, they would go find it for me, and they, would present it. Everybody on their team was super helpful in answering any questions I had. I mean, it was just a very pleasant experience. I mean, from the moment they picked me up at the airport until they dropped me back off at the airport, I felt welcome. And my husband didn't come with me. He had to work. And so I had to kind of do it on my own. That was like my first test or step, like, okay, you can do this. And so I just liked how they made me feel very welcome, and they're very open. And yes, you get these documents and you're thinking, oh my gosh, what am I signing here?
What am I getting myself into?
What am I getting myself into? Yes, but they had a great process. I mean, from meet the team to face you, they have all these steps in place that really help you along the way. You're really never going, okay, well, I don't know what's next, or, where do I go from here? It's very much just drawn out for you. You just follow. And even after you open, once you sign and you pay and you're like, okay, they don't just go, okay, well, good luck. They literally have a step-by-step process.
Wait, we got to talk about that as well in some detail. So did you go through some sort of validation stage where you had an opportunity to talk to some franchisees before you joined the family, so to speak?
Yeah, that was fun. They were done through calls, and then obviously once you're there, you get to meet other owners. You don't just get to meet the founders.
Yes.
So that was really helpful. But yeah, even before I went to Pittsburgh, I hopped on calls with owners being there, and I was able to ask them anything I wanted. So that was extremely helpful. And my husband was on those calls too, because he obviously always has good input as well and good questions. And so that was definitely extremely helpful to be able to move forward and say, okay, well, these people all like it. And it was nice because you got to hear from people all over the US, somebody would be on there from Texas, and I'm like, okay, cool. That's a similar market, because if you just hear from somebody in California, that's hard for me in Oklahoma, because I'm like, well, that might not work out here. It's a totally different culture and crowd. So it was nice it was nice to hear from them, but it's also nice to hear from people that are kind of closer around you, like geographically. So
yeah, and everybody, myself being a franchise consultant, franchise broker, and I work with people all the time, everybody has a little bit definition of what a proven brand is.
Right.
But you hit it. That was very important, Eleen, because when people get to see that a brand is successful in larger cities, smaller cities, different states, then you all of a sudden start to have a comfort level that there is an absolute proof of concept. Right. This can work anywhere.
Right. Because in California, now on both coasts, I would say lash extensions, that was something people knew about. It was big in Vegas, New York with Fashion Week and all those things, like people knew about it. Well, Oklahoma, to this day, people look at me and they go, what is it? What do you do? And I still have to educate, a lot on what lash extensions even are. And so it was nice to hear from people, in Arkansas and Texas and, places like that, where I'm like, okay, they're also doing well, and they're still having to educate, but they're still getting clients in the door, and they're able to do the services. So that was extremely important for me, as a potential franchise owner, to know that, okay, they're in similar, because, I'm the only one in Oklahoma. So it's like, I didn't really have anybody to talk to. So
Eleen, we all know that women make all the major decisions in any household in America, right? We know that. Yeah. So clearly you didn't need, you needed a thumbs up from your husband. What were you expecting? At what point did he think you were crazy? What was his thought process?
No, just personally for me, there was something in me that always knew I could do something like this. But just having him believe in me too. That's all I needed. Just somebody that's like, hey, you were there for me for the 11 years at the dental office and you had my back. And now I'm going to be there for you to do your franchising or whatever you want to do. And I'm going to have your back. So
Love
just that support, you know, and he
it.
probably does think I'm crazy. And he
All
has to
entrepreneurs
listen.
are crazy. It's totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, you know, that's part of it.
Yeah.
But you know, there's days obviously that, you know, if you're any type of business owner, no matter a franchisee or, you know, mom and pop place, you're going to have a bad day. And so, you know, he's there to be like, okay, you know, you can do this, you got this. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
So did you initially sign a single unit deal?
No, I did a 3-pack right from the get-go.
Wow. Right off the bat. I love it.
Yeah. And then I just purchased the fourth one. Now, you know, it's definitely more work to have 3 versus, because it's just me. Like, I don't have a regional manager or anything like that. I have managers in each of my studios, but I manage those 3 managers. I feel like if I had a regional manager, I could probably open more, but I'm kind of running out of cities in the Oklahoma City metro. I don't know. We don't have that many big cities. So, but on the fourth one, I actually have a friend come in with me. She's going to be 50-50 partner with me on that one, just so she can kind of, you know, she'll use my expertise on getting it up and going and running, and she'll kind of take over and do the day-to-day, because
I love it. That's fantastic. So let's go back to training. I kind of redirected earlier. So talk about the support you got when you opened the very first location, and what was your mindset? We know you're an entrepreneur at heart. You finally got to do your first business of your own. What was the training like? What was the support like to get the first store open?
I mean, it was wonderful. And honestly, so in the fall of 2019 is when I decided I'm doing this. And you think about all the things that can go wrong when you're wanting to do this. And I thought of everything. And then I opened my studio February of 2020. And then we did the training and everything, right? Corporate came in and they trained my staff, and it was wonderful. And we did great. And we had members off the gate, and it was great. And then it was shut down. And
the C word.
Yeah, I don't even want to say it.
Yes.
And it was, you know, and it was just like, who would have thought? Nobody would have ever the year before been like, oh, I'm not going to open my own business because a pandemic might happen. And, you know, like nobody. So that was rough, but I have to say that's another reason why I'm so glad I went with franchising, because during the pandemic, during the shutdown, they were there helping, you know, what do you need to do with your staff at this point? You know, how do you support them? How do you get them to come back once we're back open? Those are all things, you know, I don't know. I mean, people were really struggling because nobody knew what to do and how to handle the situation. And so just having that network of other owners and corporate and, you know, just this big community that was able to bounce ideas off of each other. Okay, how we're going to weather the storm was so amazing. And you never know. I mean, hopefully something like that won't happen again, but it's just nice to know that if something happens, you have all these people, all these brains thinking of ways to get through it. And so that was extremely helpful. I don't know what I would have done if I would have just done my own thing. So, you know, luckily we were able to open back up, and we were able to pick off right where we left off, and it's just been upwards ever since. So I'm really grateful. But so corporate came in. They, you know, they trained my staff. They taught us about the products, you know, how to sell them, how to sell memberships. I mean, they have everything right there. Like I said, all you have to do is just follow the process. They have people in place. They have a process in place. Follow it, and you'll be successful.
I love it. So being that it's National Women's Small Business Month, you know, it seems you would think in a beauty related franchise like Deka Lash that it would be all women owners. So, but I understand there's guys that are Deka Lash franchisees, you know, but what, you know, as a woman owning a business, a franchise, the trend is way up for women, for female business owners, which is incredible. What do you think? what do you think attributes to that statistic, I guess?
I think just having that support, I mean, as women, sometimes we can feel guilty about, being in business, especially like having a family, you want to be a stay-at-home mom, or, and you think about all the reasons why you shouldn't be in business or why you shouldn't do that. And so, just having a franchise guide you, and being, again, in a community where there's other owners that are women, and just empowering you and being like, no, it's okay. You can do both. You can have it all. It's all there for you. Just having that support. And I feel like, people are seeing that, and they're seeing that they can have it. And, being able to be, semi-absentee with Deka Lash, I don't have to be at the studios. I can do something with my family and do the work kind of on my own time whenever I can get to it.
Yes.
That's something I think that people are choosing more and more, is being able to kind of pick the times that they, want to get their work done, and when they want to be with family, and when they want to do things like that. And so I think for women, this is just, it's a great opportunity. And I think that's why they continue choosing to go with that.
Yeah. And women are far smarter than men anyway. So they're probably
But
better
I did
suited.
like that about Deka Lash too, is that, I met with another lash franchise. I'm not going to say who, but it was a bunch of, men in suits talking about the bottom line. And I was very put off by that. And not that, I mean, it's important, right? Everybody wants to make money. That's why we go into business. I'm not saying the bottom line isn't important, but it just felt very much, I don't know, just
too corporate.
And it just wasn't. And so when I went to Pittsburgh and I met with, the Deka Lash team, it wasn't like that. There was tons of women in corporate positions, and that was just nice to see. I like a good mix, I think, but especially I feel like in the beauty industry, and especially with lash extensions, if it's all men, what do they only know so much. They aren't the ones getting those services done, and feeling, beautiful after getting the service done, and knowing really what women want in that way. So I think having women in place in corporate, and then also as owners, is extremely helpful in the industry that we're in.
Yeah, you brought up again some really fantastic points. When people are exploring franchises, they get very nervous and fearful of, how do I know if I'm picking the right franchise, or what have you. And we all know, you certainly know by now, that the educational process, when a franchisor like Deka Lash, that's very good, takes you through their process and their system, you're going to naturally get more and more comfortable. Right. And you hit it on the head. There was a perfect cultural fit for you. Yes. That you got to not only see, but feel. And that's what I tell people. It's going to become obvious. I hate to, be kind of silly about it, but like a marriage, there's a point where it's going to feel natural. You should get married, in this case, a business relationship.
100% agree with that.
I mean, it either fits or it doesn't fit. You don't have to worry. Let it unfold on its timetable. Some people make a very quick decision, and other people take a little more time, and that's okay.
It's I look at it as a partnership between Deka Lash and I. They do a very good job also not, putting too many guidelines on the owners. There's definitely guidelines there. And so I think if you wanted to, that'd be one of the reasons maybe not to go into franchising. But, I also think that's a misconception, because yes, there are guidelines, but then you're held to guidelines even if you do your own thing too. Those guidelines set by your clients, right? So, yes. There's going to be guidelines anyway. So I don't know. I look at it as a partnership, and I feel like you want to be able to really stand behind whatever it is that you're doing. And so it has to click, right? You have to go there and you have to be like, okay, what they're doing, I want to be a part of. I want to be, I do this and I want to be part of it. And I'm excited to have this relationship with them. And then you're going to go places and you're going to be like, oh, I don't know if I can really get behind that.
No, I love that. With the guidelines, I always like to say that the best franchisors certainly give you the boundaries or the guardrails
Yeah.
but they don't tell you exactly what speed to drive or how to drive. And they, you have to trust the process. And that's a
Right.
two-way street in a perfect relationship, the way you're describing.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's talk about staffing. I want to hear, everybody's talking about it. It's so hard to find people. So what are your thoughts? What are your tips and tricks of the trade to finding the best people, finding and keeping, retaining the best people?
It has been a struggle. Even here in Oklahoma, it's been really hard. And I feel like we haven't been hit quite as hard as, some other states. But I think if you create a really good culture within your studios, people will want to work there, and it kind of spreads, and people will, we have tons of people come and drop off resumes and, be like, oh, I'm out of school, I want to work there. So I have that pool of people that I can choose from. I reach out to schools. I do about 2 or 3 presentations at schools a year, where I go and I bring little goodies, and I have, they always like free stuff, so I bring them.
Especially if it's food.
Yeah. And then I do my little, presentation about what we are and what we stand for and what we do, and I usually get quite a few good candidates from that. And then obviously, there's some online websites you can go to and post your ad. And so I get some people with that as well.
Yep.
But it's gotten better. I feel like it hasn't been. There was a time where it was extremely hard to get even anybody applying. That's what the hard part was, is like you couldn't even get an application.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's definitely back to almost normal. So
good deal.
But keeping them, you just have to, like I said, create a culture that they want to be at. Make it fun for them. And I appreciate everybody that works at Deka Lash so much. My own staff, they're just wonderful people. And I feel like I treat them really well. I do lots of fun things for them, and I treat them with little gifts here and there, just out of the blue, just to kind of let them know how much I do appreciate everything that they do. I think that's important. Just showing appreciation. I get, people will be like, well, they're just doing their job, you pay them and they do the job. But I don't know, I feel like it could be a little bit more than that. So
yeah, no, I think you're right. And obviously you've become an employer of choice, as a place that people want to work.
Right.
I always want to talk about numbers, or really financing. A lot of people listening like, well, that sounds wonderful. How the heck did you get started? Where'd you get the money? Did you get a loan? Did you use cash? How did you launch the first one?
So the first one was actually a 401k rollover. So
got it.
we used my husband's 401k. He was very kind to do that.
Yeah.
And he's in a fortunate situation where he was able to do that. So we used it, rolled it over, and then we're able to do it that way. And then.
I love that. And for those listening that don't know, a 401k rollover, the acronym is ROBS, ROBS, Rollover Business Startup Loan. And basically a C corporation is set up as a result of your 401k. You pull out a bunch of money and you have a new investment account that you get to invest in something new. In this case, it was a Deka Lash franchise. So that is amazing. But look, it's a tribute to your husband and you that you're able to save a bunch of money. So that's very helpful. Some people don't save, they spend it all.
No, definitely. It was definitely really helpful to get started. And, it made it where we really didn't have to, it helped get the studio up much quicker, because we didn't have that loan payment and things like that, which, again, we're fortunate in Oklahoma. My lease, my rent is very low compared to some other, locations nationwide. So again, lucky there. But then, on the flip side of that, we're also only tier 2. I don't know if Jennifer touched on that, but we have different tiers for different areas, for services that we charge. Obviously, in California, or on the coasts, they can charge more for their services. In Oklahoma, we're only on tier 2. So
yeah, and in franchising, especially restaurants, they have different tiers. Sometimes they don't broadcast it as much, but if you're in the middle of New York City, your menu prices are going to be certainly higher.
right. I mean, your rent is much higher, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and your cost for everything is much higher. So, I mean, it makes sense. But again, we're just fortunate. We're in a good spot. So
love it. Well, Eleen, you've been amazing and very inspirational for everyone. So any final thoughts, words of wisdom before we leave for the day? What do you say to people out there that maybe want to do what you've done?
I say, do it. Do it. Absolutely. Don't be scared. Don't be nervous. Get on the franchise bandwagon. You won't regret it. You'll love it. Like I said, I would do it again in a heartbeat. If I had more cities, I would open more.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit hesitant, and maybe we can talk about this off camera, but I'm a little bit hesitant to go out of state.
Yeah.
Not being physically there, but I'd like to pick your brain on that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. We'll talk about that. And there's always a way to do that as well. But hey, look, you've taken the first largest step is doing it and starting. I tell people all the time, what's the trick? Well, first of all, start.
Right.
And you worry about, the interim steps after you've already been successful.
Right. Yeah. I feel like the regret would be so much higher if you didn't do it, regretting and going, oh, I didn't do something, than regretting something that you have done or you have tried. Because at least you can say, hey, I tried it, might have not worked, but I gave it my all. But
I love it.
I would just hate to regret something that I didn't even try to do, or so that's how I look at things.
Love it. Well, no, that's a perfect way to wrap up for today. Eleen, thank you so much for being here.
My
and
pleasure.
I wish you continued success. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening today. Please like, follow, and subscribe. This is Lance Graulich. Until next time.